That's the majority of people. Middle class America have not been educated as far as finances are concerned.
That the majority of people retire at or below poverty levels. You should be thinking in terms of building generational wealth, leaving something for your children's children.
Exactly.
Hey, what's going on, family? Welcome to another episode of Called to Serve podcast. I'm your host, Reggie Hubbard. Today, I am with a very special guest. She's near and dear to my heart. She's helped me come up in the financial industry. Listen, let me tell y'all about Mrs. Stephanie Lee, okay? So she is a happy and devoted wife of 34 years. She is an interior design enthusiast, and she has been a financial industry professional for nearly 2 decades. So she's got a lot of knowledge that she's going to drop on us. She's going to hit us with some game. So welcome, Mama.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's an honor to have you here. I ain't going to steal your thunder, but I just feel like I got to let it be known that, her and her husband, they kind of took me underneath their wing early in my entrepreneur days. So I've learned a lot from them over the years, which has helped me continue to grow as an entrepreneur in many different industries. So I'm definitely grateful for you being here, and it's an honor to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm used to calling her Mama. So, so Stephanie, tell us about yourself. And how did it all start? Where are you from? Give us a little bit of your background, before leading into making that decision to go into the financial industry.
Well, I am a Georgia native. I'm a peach. I'm from a little small town northwest of here called Rockmart, Georgia. Most people have never heard of it. So in my earlier life, my goal was to be a news reporter. I always wanted to be a news reporter, but things kind of changed. So I went to college for accounting, and I was in that field for a little while, worked for the bank. And then one day I was on vacation with a good friend of ours, Byron and I, and he said, Stephanie, you would be so good in sales. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I said, I don't want to do that. And so he said, but you know what? You can make a lot of money. I said, for real? And so after that, that's when I started, in this industry. And that was back in 2007.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, but of course, the money was one of the first motivating factors. But then once I got in the industry, Reggie, I actually started on the Medicare side.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I started on the Medicare side, and in life, a little bit of life. But when I would talk to people, of course, I dealt with seniors, people who had retired, and I saw where people did not retire well. They did not retire well. And so many people were living off of $7, $8, no more than $1,100 a month. And it truly, truly broke my heart.
Wow.
And so I asked myself, I said, what is it that I can do to help people before they get to this point? And then that's when I really got into on the financial side as far as life insurance and investments are concerned.
Wow. So how was that, I guess, working in the Medicare side with the seniors? What was that like? I mean, when I know you said that you were seeing people that were living off $700, $800, $1,100 a month. Mm-hmm. Like, hold up, where they do that at? Listen, right? Like, your dang light bill $1,100 a month these days. You know what I'm saying? So, man, the struggle must have been real.
Yes, and the struggle is still real. You would be surprised as to the people who still live off of that little bit of money. And the sad part is people don't realize that Social Security is not to live off of. It's to supplement your income. But unfortunately, we have not been educated about that. So because of that, our people, and when I say our people, I'm not talking about Black people, Hispanic people, white people. I'm talking about middle class America. And, that's the majority of people. Middle class America have not been educated as far as finances are concerned. So that's why there are so many people in that predicament. So when you look at statistics, the majority of people retire at or below poverty level. And so when I saw that, I was like, you know what, there's a need. There's a need to get to our people so that we can change this dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, that's real. Like when you said that the majority of people retire at or below poverty levels, like it was like the hairs on the back of my neck like just stood up, because that's shocking. And you see that every day.
Every day.
You see Miss Betty at Walmart, 70 years old, 80 years old, standing there for 8 hours a day, greeting you, checking your receipt, and I've often wondered, man, like why is she still working at 70 years old, 80 years old?
Exactly.
On her feet.
Exactly. And Reggie, they're not there because they want to be there.
Yeah.
They are there because they have to be there.
Wow.
And so I would have clients, and when their medicines would go up, and I'm not exaggerating, a lot of them would have assistance, like Medicare or something like that. So when their medicines would go up, they would, complain to me about it. And I'm talking about going up like $1 or a quarter. And I was like, hold up. At one point, I suffered really bad from migraines. My migraine medicine with insurance was over $400 a month. And I'm like, you're complaining about a quarter or 50 cents or $1? And Reggie, it broke my heart. It really broke my heart. So I was like, you know what? What is it that can be done to help people?
Okay, and I'm sure like that our viewers and our audience is going to be wondering, all right, yeah, so we hear the problem. What can be done to help people?
Well, like I said, when it comes to middle class America, Reggie, it's not that we don't make money. We don't know what to do with our money. And we don't know what to do with our money because we haven't been educated about it. Because you take even on our jobs, when it comes to human resources and contributing to our 401ks and stuff, they don't educate us about that. They don't say, okay, this is what you need to do. Make sure you contribute. You will be surprised as to people who are on jobs and never even contributed to their 401k plan. And that's one thing we tell people, okay, I don't care if you contribute a little, but at least do something. At least do up to what they will match. Because that's your livelihood. That's your income for when you retire. That's your income when you don't have that job income anymore. So those are the things that we started educating people on. So instead of focusing so much on seniors, I was like, okay, we need to start focusing on the younger generation so that they won't make the same mistakes that our parents, our grandparents, made. So that's what we do to try to help people so that it's like, okay, when you retire, you don't have to be Miss Betty or Mr. Sam at Walmart.
Yeah.
You can be sitting back enjoying your life.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that we started doing so that we can try to really help people.
And that's tough. That's really is tough. When I'm driving somewhere, anywhere, and I see an older homeless person or, an older elderly person still doing manual labor, it's like, man, like that's crazy. But back to the 401k, I've talked with people over the years and I've said, hey man, why don't you contribute to your 401k? I'm just curious. Or like, do you contribute? And the fact of the matter is that a lot of people tell themselves, man, like I need that money.
Exactly.
Like I can't afford that 200 or whatever, 300, couple $100 a month to put away in my 401k, because if I do that, then something's not getting paid.
Right. And you know what we tell people, Reggie?
What's that?
You can't afford not to.
Ooh.
Yes, be like you can't afford not to. Because think about it, if it's automatically coming out, you don't even see it.
Facts.
And normally, if we don't see something, we don't miss it.
Yeah.
So that's the mindset that we have got to start. That's how we got to start thinking.
Yes.
That's the mindset that we have to teach people. If you don't see it, you don't miss it. So that little percentage, believe me, is not going to make a difference. And plus, it helps you on your taxes.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Hey, y'all better start learning something. It's all about you gotta know the rules of the game to win. In any game, there's a huge tax game out there. There's rules to the game. If you don't know the rules, you can't win.
Exactly.
You get what I'm saying? So everybody needs to learn the rules to the money game, because it's a real thing. 100%. Okay, so the 401k. So let's just put it into perspective. Let's say I'm 25 years old, right? I just get married, and I got me and my spouse. We have a child, and I'm the breadwinner. Okay, she works kind of part time, but for the most part, I'm bringing home the bacon. I'm afraid if something happens to me, my family's going to be left in a horrible situation. If I came to somebody like you, what direction are you going to push me in?
Well, the first thing we are going to help you to appreciate is if something happens to you, what happens to your income?
It dies with me.
It dies with you. So we make sure that we educate people about life insurance. Because, Reggie, what do you think we have been taught that life insurance is for?
Funerals, burials.
Exactly.
To ball out till you fall out.
I like that. I like that. Exactly. And so because we have been taught that it's for funerals or for burials, how much do people normally get?
Shoot, like 15, 20, 25,000, whatever, whatever's the cheapest thing they could get.
Exactly. $15,000, $20,000. I just need enough to bury mom and them,
Yeah.
So, but this is the thing. If something happened to you and you only had $15,000, $25,000 worth of life insurance, that's going in the grave with you.
100%.
But what's going to happen to your family?
Yeah, they still going to be hurting.
They are still going to be hurting. So therefore, what we educate people about is that life insurance is income replacement. We've never been taught that. Like you said, all we think about, okay, we want to make sure we put our parents away or our siblings or whomever. Or our husband or wife, we want to make sure that we put them away properly. Okay, so after we put them away properly, okay, then life still goes on.
100%.
So how am I going to still live? Am I going to still be able to live in this neighborhood that I live in now? Am I going to be able to send my child to the school of my choice? Am I still going to be able to do the things that my husband and I did when that income was coming in?
Yeah.
So those are things that we have to think about, because we want, when we leave this earth, we want to make sure that we leave our family the same or better than what they were when I was here.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we need to make sure that we do for our families. But we don't do it, Reggie, simply because we haven't been taught it. And because we haven't been taught it, unfortunately, we don't think about it. So those are the things that are so important, that we make sure that our family members are properly protected when it comes to life insurance, so that that income can come in 5 to 10 years after our loved one is gone.
Yeah, because that can do a lot for you. You have the income still coming in. Life can continue to kind of go the way that it was going. Obviously, the loved one is not there. But I think, and this is my personal opinion, I think that is one of the best ways that you can honor your family. And I think, and I'm speaking from a man perspective. I'm speaking from a husband perspective, and I'm speaking from a father perspective. Mm-hmm. My obligation to my family should not stop at the grave.
Exactly.
If you are thinking that it should, well, I'm gonna be dead, it won't matter. I'm just gonna say it. Shame on you.
Exactly.
You get what I'm saying? Shame on you. Right? You should be thinking in terms of building generational wealth. Leaving something for your children's children.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because, Reggie, this is the thing. That's your last love letter to your family.
Ooh, I've never heard it put like that.
Yes. So what is your last love letter saying to your family? And not only that, we don't think about grieving time. Mm. You know, when somebody really close to you pass away, I mean, that's devastating. That's devastating. And when we're on a job, they give us, 3-5 days, maybe a week if we have to go out of town.
Yeah.
You know, but that's not enough time to grieve your loved one. But think about it. If you have the proper amount of life insurance, then you can decide when you're going to go back to work.
Say that again. You can say that again.
You don't have to go back to work when they want you to come back. You can decide, because nobody can decide how long you need to grieve or have to grieve.
Yeah.
And so what we have to remember too, when it comes to having the right amount of life insurance or enough, then when we have money, Reggie, we have choices.
True.
But with no money, guess what? We have no choices.
That's real.
So that is what life insurance can do for your family.
So income protection, income replacement. Mm-hmm. You know, I think you hit the target, because young people are not having these conversations because they think that they're invincible.
Yes.
The reality is tomorrow's not promised to anyone. You know what I mean? And I think that might be a big reason why the younger generations don't see the value or the necessity for life insurance. It's because they're like, oh, well, I'm young, I still got time, this and that. Like, I don't even have kids. I ain't even married. What I need it for? Well, let me put y'all up on something. This is food for thought, right? You may not be married, you may not have kids, but you need to get that stuff while you're young. When you're independent, you know what I mean? You got a job, get income and things like that. You need to get that stuff when you're young, because you never know what may happen. And you may not be able to get it later.
Exactly.
You know, I've got some friends like that. You know, we're in our mid-30s now, right? I tried to put them on game, you know, close to maybe 10 years ago. They weren't trying to hear it. Man, bro, I'm just chilling. I'm living life, man. YOLO, this, and that. I'm like, man, now got families, married, health issues came up, can't get, coverage. If they can get coverage, it's horrible coverage. It's very expensive, and it's just, I'm just like, man, I'm like over here like, whoo, you know what I mean? Like, I'm glad I hopped on that wave.
Yes, because like you were basically saying, the best time to get it is when you're young and when you're healthy. Because, Reggie, is very inexpensive then. Yeah. And unfortunately, when we think about life insurance, people look at it as a bill. But like you mentioned, this is generational wealth that you can pass down to your families. How do you think a lot of people start businesses? It's because their parents or grandparents were smart enough to get a substantial amount of life insurance so that if anything ever happened to them, they're like, you know what? And my mom used to tell us the same thing. You can start a business, you can pay your house off, you can, take time to, do whatever you want to. As I mentioned earlier, you can go back to work when you want to. those are the things that we have to remember, that this is what life insurance can do for you.
Yeah. And, I think it's just very sad that we think about it as a bill, and when we talk about generational wealth, we got to stop thinking about it as a bill and start thinking about it as a will.
Thank you. I like that.
Right? Stop thinking about it as a bill. Start thinking about it as a will, because tomorrow's not promised to any of us. And at the end of the day, I like what you said. You said that's going to be your final love letter to your family. What that's going to say is, you know what, family, I cared so much about your welfare. I cared so much about your future that I invested in this 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, because the one thing in life that I know is certain is my death.
Right. Exactly.
That's the one thing in life that I know is coming one day or another, is that I will no longer be here.
And we don't know. We do not know when that might happen.
And we don't know when that might happen. And then you mentioned, I thought it was I wanted to bring up something, because you mentioned how inexpensive it is. It really is. And it's crazy. It's crazy when I think about it, and I think about the things that we pay for. You got people out here paying $400,000-$500,000 a month for a car. $200, $300, $400 for the insurance on that car. That's worth $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And you won't pay, I don't know, depending on what you got going on, it costs you a lot less than that to insure your life.
Exactly.
So you're telling me that your life is not worth more than $40,000, $50,000?
Yeah, that's how people think. We will pay for auto insurance on a depreciating asset.
Woo! Come on.
But we will not pay for life insurance for the most precious asset that we have, and that's our lives.
That's real right there. That is real.
And Reggie, one other thing that I wanted to mention was, we were talking about young people. I was listening to this talk the other day that was so profound. Like you say, young people think that they are invincible. And in this talk that I heard, this guy said, when a wife dies, the husband is a widower. When he dies, we are widows. And then with kids, they become orphans when their parents die. But do you know there's no word for when your child dies?
Ooh.
And it's simply because it's really so unnatural for your child to die before you.
Yeah.
Which means that that's very devastating. And so young people feel like, well, it's not going to happen to me. But think about it, Reggie. If something happened to you, and of course you have a family.
Yes.
But even before you had a family, say you didn't have a family, single person, and something happened to you, and you left your mom money. Just think of what that would be able to do for her, simply because I cannot imagine how long she would grieve if something happened to you. So she would be like, you know what? My son thought enough about me to make sure that if something happened to him, I would be okay.
Yeah.
I would have enough time to grieve him. I would have enough time to, or choice. I would have choices or a choice as to whether or not I want to go back to work or not. So those are the things that we have to think about, because when we think about life insurance, it's really not for us. Yeah. It's for those that we love, those that we're leaving behind.
And I think, that's a great point. It's not for us, but I think being a human is we have sometimes a selfish nature. Yes. Well, I may not be able to do nothing with it while I'm alive, or this and that. And what if you were actually responsible for taking care of a parent? Exactly. What if you were their caretaker? and something happens to you, somebody got to take care of them now.
Right.
That money can be used to hire somebody, for a long time, depending on how much coverage you had.
Exactly.
So that's something to think about. And another thing, and I know some people gonna get mad. The young folks gonna get mad, and maybe older folks. But at the end of the day, we keep it real and Call to Serve podcast, right? Well, I got it through my job. Okay. Sometimes I'll be like, bruh, come here. I be wanting to take grown men and just like get the back of their neck, because I'm like, bro, all right, who's responsible ultimately for the security of your family? It's you.
Right.
Okay. So you don't have anything in place outside of your job. You don't have any way of making sure that your family is properly protected and their financial future is secured. Well, I got it through my job. Okay, bro. Let me drop some game on you. What happens if your job leaves you or you leave your job? What happens to that coverage that you got?
It's gone.
It's gone. It's over. OVAH. Over. Right? So I'm like, bro, so you're going to pay all this money for all these years that you work in this job. You work this job for 15 years, 20 years. And when you leave, that coverage go bye-bye. Holla at your player. See you later. You get what I'm saying?
Most definitely.
But on another note, what if your job lays you off?
Right.
They lay you off. That happens. People lose their job left and right.
Every day.
Okay, what happened to that coverage? Gone. Adios. Sayonara. You get what I'm saying? And people don't really think about that.
They don't.
And then they have zero control over that policy.
Exactly.
Most people never even seen that policy because they don't hold the master policy.
Exactly. And Reggie, going back to, what I told you in the Medicare field, I'm dealing with seniors. They are retiring. They have no life insurance because all they had was on their jobs. They're 65 years old or older.
Yeah.
And guess what? They need life insurance. At 65 years old, how do you think our health is?
A lot in a different position than it was when you was 35.
Thank you. Look, and bags of medicine. Who do you think is going to insure you? And who do you think is going to insure you for the proper amount that you actually need?
Yeah.
So, like you said, okay, yeah, I got insurance on my job, but it's not yours.
Yeah, nah.
Because when they leave you or you leave them, guess what?
Deuces.
Thank you.
Deuces. So y'all will notice I get a little passionate about this because this has been instilled in me. This has been taught me, drilled within me for, almost a decade now. And I see it all the time. Every time I go to Walmart, you always going to see somebody elderly at the door. Someone really young or someone knocking on heaven's door. And it's just painful to see. It's painful to see that most people can actually become financially independent. They just don't have the right discipline and the right habits.
Right.
And then a huge part of people just don't have the education.
That's a huge part. Yeah.
People say that knowledge is power. I think that's a half truth, because you can know everything in the world, but if you don't do anything with it, it means nothing. Applied knowledge is power.
Exactly.
You get what I'm saying? So, I'm right there with you. You get what I'm saying? So kicking it to the like the Medicare or the insurance, side, is there any maybe scenarios you can share with us that you think would be beneficial for our audience to hear, that could be even like a learning moment from them?
Plenty, unfortunately. but one that comes to mind, Reggie, is when I first started in this industry, I did Medicare, like I said, for the most part. But I did life insurance too. And I remember being in the home of this couple, really, really nice couple. And I wrote his Medicare policy for him. And he was kind of sickly. And his wife was like, make him get life insurance. And so, because he didn't want to get any, right?
She wasn't trying to be left high and dry.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, dude, come on now. And so I talked him into getting some life insurance. And at the time, I was writing whole life insurance.
Okay.
That's what I was taught. That's what they, pushing, telling me to push on people to buy. Because when I first came into the industry, when it came to insurance, I wasn't really educated about life insurance. I was just told to go sell it, sell this. And so anyway, so he did buy it. Reggie, this guy died 9 months after I wrote that policy.
Ooh.
And it was only $25,000 worth.
Ooh.
And so I remember her getting the check, and she was very appreciative. She was very appreciative of the $25,000. And at the time, I think she was 60 years old. She was 60 years old. She had lost her job. She would not be able to receive his
Social Security.
Thank you. His Social Security until she was 62.
Oh.
Yes. So she had to borrow the money until the check came in, for his burial. And I was like, ooh. And her unemployment was going to end like in a few months, like right after he died. I was like, oh my goodness. So she was like, but you know what? She said this $25,000 would carry me over until I start receiving his Social Security in a couple of years. Okay, fast forward. I started working with this other company. I was really, really educated about life insurance and what it was for, because I had been in the industry 8 years at that particular time. And so I'm like, all of these years I've been selling life insurance, but I didn't know what I was selling, to my friends and family. So when I found out what I could have done for him, I was like, oh my goodness, I could have sold them $150,000 worth of life insurance, term for the same price. And she would have been in a much better position than what she was left with the $25,000.
Wow.
And so it broke my heart. And I was like, okay, again, going back to, I wanted to know what I could do to help people to better themselves so that they would not be left high and dry if something happened to their family member, or when they turn 65, that they would be in a better position as far as their finances were, if they knew better, as far as their finances were concerned. So now I'm in that position. My husband and I are in that position to help people, make sure that they have the right kind of life insurance, the proper amount of life insurance, and making sure that when it comes to investing, that you start where you stand. Stand where you start. Which one is? Start where you stand.
Know where you stand.
So that even if you start with a little, you will be surprised as to how much, that money accumulates. And so what we do now, we make sure that when we talk to people that we're like, okay, buy term, invest the difference. Because, Reggie, we were never taught that. Again, going back to, we were taught buy enough life insurance, and all we were taught, when the insurance man came to your home, I'm dating myself. I remember when they used to come, they used to call them the debit men, and they would come and collect cash, and we would buy those little small policies and not know that we need something to make sure that we're leaving generational wealth, to our families. And so now that we have been educated about life insurance and been educated about investments, it's like, okay, this is what we can do for middle class America so that now when they retire, they can retire well instead of retiring at or below poverty level like the majority of people do.
Wow. That's heavy. I've heard that a time or two, buy term, invest the difference. Mm-hmm. I personally believe in that model. Mm-hmm. It's because I started when I was young. And, it is what it is, right? Buy term, buy cheap. Maybe to the point to where if you're investing when you're younger, maybe you won't need it when you're older. If you live to be that long, right?
Exactly.
I think in the long run, if you can build up your investments to where you have your money working for you, right? And now you can live off of the dividends or, the interest of your investments and not necessarily need life insurance because it gets expensive when you get older. Try getting a policy at, 69 years old.
Right.
All right, you about to be paying buku bucks.
Exactly.
And most people can't afford that.
Nope.
So imagine having enough investments or liquid, capital to where now you can just live off of the interest that it makes every year.
Right. But think about it, Reggie. Why do you think, when we think of investments, we don't invest because we're not educated about it.
Yeah.
And things that we're not educated about, we tend to run from it.
100%. Because most people, right, we're taught, you don't put your money in the market because it's too risky. But what do you think the top 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% put their money?
In the market.
You get what I'm saying? So you got to educate yourselves, but you also need to look at the history of the market.
Exactly.
You get what I'm saying? It's been way more good years than there have been bad.
Exactly.
And it has a tendency to bounce back. You know what I mean? That's not me giving any type of investment advice. That's just me sharing my personal opinion based off of what I've seen. So it seems like, all right, so you started selling whole life, then you transitioned to term because you had a personal conviction that you felt that was better for your clients.
Most definitely.
Okay.
Most definitely. Because when you look at whole life insurance, Reggie, it's very expensive. Even when you're young, it's expensive. And for the most part, most people cannot afford the amount that they need. But with term insurance, it's low cost for a high amount. And when you think about it, people are like, well, but I can get cash. I can get cash off of my whole life. And so I always ask people, when it comes to your auto insurance, does your auto insurance have a savings attached to it?
Not that I know of.
Does your homeowner's insurance have a savings attached to it?
No.
So why would we want a savings attached to our life insurance? And then what people don't realize, you're paying all this money because they're telling you that you get two things. But you really only get one. Because if something happens to you, Reggie, then you have, let's say $100,000 whole life policy, and then it has built up some cash value. When you die, what do you think happens to that savings?
I mean, what most people would think is that it goes to them.
Exactly. But it doesn't. It goes back to the insurance company. So why am I paying for two things when I'm only getting one? Or even if you borrow from it, When you borrow from that policy, what do you think happens to your face amount?
It deducts from it.
It deducts from it. So technically, that money's never yours. Because if you die and you still owe that money, guess what? They're going to deduct it. They're going to deduct whatever is still owed plus whatever interest you owe on it. Then they're like, okay, we'll write you a check for the difference.
Hey, hold on. You said interest.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You said interest. So we got to talk about that now. So I got to pay interest on my own money?
Yes, sir. Up to 8%.
Wow.
Yes. You got to pay interest on that money, and they're going to get their interest. They're going to get whatever was taken out before they write that check to your loved one. And when you think about it, that's not fair. That's not fair. I'm paying for this.
Yeah.
So why are you taking it away from me? But you know why we don't think about it? Because we haven't been taught. You know, insurance agents make it look really, really good. They make it look really, really good, as far as whole life is concerned. But that's why we teach people buy term, invest the difference, invest your money, and like you said, I'm not giving any investment advice or whatever, but invest your money, and that's yours.
Yeah,
that's your money, so you can get it when you want to. It's your money. So therefore, that is the smartest thing that we can do, so that when something does happen, guess what? We can pass that down. We can pass it. That goes back to our generational wealth. We can pass that down to our family members. That so-called savings that's in your whole life insurance policy, you passing that back to the insurance company.
That's crazy. You're
not passing it
back
down
to
your
insurance
family.
Company.
Exactly.
Wow. So you guys pretty much take a loan on your own money.
Exactly.
Somebody told me something one time. And I think about it this way. When you go to a bank and you get a loan, whose money are you borrowing?
The banks.
The banks, right? Or whoever invests that money or whatever.
Right.
So to me, when I see or hear the word loan, I think that's not even mine. That's somebody else's that I've got to pay back.
Exactly.
So, I don't want to get like too much into that and too in depth, but I remember looking at a policy, a whole life policy, and seeing something that said policy loan, and I just kind of like, whoa, wait, what policy loan? And then it said like 6 or 7%, and I thought that, I was like, yo, that's interesting, because when I seeing the word loan automatically tells me that it doesn't belong to me. Right. It automatically tells me that it doesn't belong to me. But you know why people don't get that, right? It's because let's be real. How many people actually open up their policies and read them?
No. Very, very few. What? But let me tell you the kicker. When I used to sell it, Reggie, I didn't ever open it up either. Because let me tell you, if they had opened up their policy and asked me any questions, I would not have not even been able to explain it to them. That's the sad part.
Wow.
So if I can't explain it, do you think I'm going to open it up and show it to them? You think I'm going to open up something and show it to them, and I can't even explain it to them?
Wow.
No. So if I'm not opening it up, they're not opening it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, most people don't. The majority of people don't.
That's crazy. That is crazy. That's your family's financial security, essentially.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you care enough to learn what it is that you have and ask questions?
Yeah.
I think, people just, I guess, take what the insurance agents, say, the face value of what they say. You know what I mean? But But yeah, that's a hot topic right there.
It really
You know
is.
what I mean? And if this upset anybody, then deal with it. You know, we're free to have our own opinions. You know what I mean? I would love to hear y'all's opinions. You know, share in the comments, whatever your opinion. But so term.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Term is it. Term is it. Because what you're doing, Reggie, when you buy term is you're buying cash. You're buying a lot of cash for a small amount. And like I mentioned earlier, all the other insurances that we have to buy, none of them have a savings attached to it. So when you think about it like that, it makes sense. Let me buy enough coverage to take care of my family just in case something happens prematurely.
Yeah.
That's why we buy our life insurance. Our investments are for long term.
Gotcha.
Life insurance, you die too soon.
Yeah.
Your investments, if you live too long. Because think about it, Reggie. Ooh. How many of us think about dying?
I mean, like, I think people think about it, but they don't really think about it.
Right.
You know, it's like an afterthought or a before thought, or it's not something that you put a lot of intention in thinking about the impact of your demise.
Right.
Right. So it's kind of like, and people don't really want to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. It's like nobody wants to think about them not being here or leaving their loved one behind, or, you know, I could go down a rabbit hole with a whole bunch of different thoughts that most people would have.
Exactly. And, you know, and it's because we don't want to die.
Yeah.
But you often hear people talk about, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do if I outlive my money, or if I live this long, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it's simply because they haven't planned well for their future. So we don't really think about dying, but we think about living too long. So what we do is we make sure that we protect you if you die too soon or if you live too long. Either way, our family will be taken care of.
Love it. Love it. Well, Ms. Stephanie, looks like we're coming up on time, but before we let you go, all right, I got something for you.
Okay.
So what I have here is a custom-made Called to Serve podcast coin, a challenge coin. And, you know, what you do is important in society, educating people, you know, helping them become financially independent, debt-free, right? That's important because that's something that generations ago was not being taught, especially in some cultures. They're not sitting at the table talking about generational wealth. As a matter of fact, they're not even sitting at the table anymore.
Right.
Right. So what you do is so important and is so necessary to help shape the financial futures of these upcoming generations. Right. So every time you look at that coin, I just want you to remember why it is that you serve, the people that you serve and the communities that you serve, because it's definitely needed and it's definitely important. And you are going to continue to change. Y'all have already changed a bunch of lives, including mine, but y'all are going to continue to change many people's lives, teaching the principles that you believe in, based off of your experience, right? So I did have one question for you, though, before I let you go.
Okay.
And I'll ask this question a lot, but what might people be surprised to know about you?
Probably. Did we talk about my decorating?
We didn't talk about it. We mentioned that you were an interior design enthusiast, but the decorating, yeah. So let me tell y'all, she be hooking it up. She be hooking it up.
I absolutely love it, Reggie. It's something that drives my husband crazy because he thinks that every other week I want to do something to change the house. But I love beauty. I love beauty, and I just love making things pretty.
Yeah.
And so it's just something that I just really, really enjoy doing. And you know, and I actually used to have a business. I had my own decorating business. And back in 2008, 2009, when the economy, you know, went south, then nobody wanted to spend any money.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay,
Yeah.
let me do something else. But I still love it. I still help my friends and family, and I have helped a few other people. But that's my second love. But I love helping people when it comes to making sure that they will, hopefully, if they will listen, because, you know, people don't like to listen, but really listen to us as far as making sure that their families are properly protected. And because we love it, our motto is to always do what's right for people.
Yeah, that's real. Well, y'all heard it. Well, check this out. We're going to drop some links in the description of how y'all can get in touch with Miss Stephanie Lee. You know, if you want to, you know, set up an appointment or a consultation, you can connect with her. Well, we'll drop some links with y'all. Just make sure that you mention that you saw her on Call to Serve podcast, so that she can know how much of a blessing that she's been today. So I'm super excited. I'm super glad that you came today. It was such an honor to sit down with you in this capacity and really just talk about what you're passionate about. And just thank you for supporting Call to Serve podcast.
And thank you so much, Reggie. You know, I love you like you're my son.
Yep.
And I really, really appreciate you giving me this time.
Yep, 100%. So we're going to have to get you back one day. But until next time.